Morning is Psalm 145, verses 8 and 9, and then verses 14 through 21. These words of the psalmist. God is gracious and merciful, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love. God is good to all, and God's compassion is over all that God has made. God upholds all who are falling, and raises up all who are bowed down. The eyes of all look to you and you give them their food in due season. You open your hand to all, satisfying the desire of every living thing. In every way, God is just and kind in every action. God is near to all who call on God in truth. God fulfills the desire of all who fear God. God also hears their cry and saves them. God watches over all who love God, but will destroy all the wicked. My mouth will speak the praise of God, and all flesh will bless God's holy name forever and ever. Our New Testament reading is Matthew chapter 14, verses 13 through 21. Hear this gospel story. Now when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a deserted place by himself. But when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the town. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion for them and cured their sick. When it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a deserted place, and the hour is now late. Send the crowds away so that they may go into the villages to buy food for themselves." Jesus said to them, "They need not go away. You give them something to eat." They replied, "We have nothing here but 5 loaves and 2 fish. And Jesus said, "Bring them here to me." Then he ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and blessed and broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples. And all the disciples gave them to the crowds. And all ate and were filled. And they took up what was left over of the broken pieces, 12 baskets full. And those who ate were about 5,000 men, besides women and children. May God bless these words to our understanding and our lives to God's service. Amen. How many Southerners are here today? Okay, I knew we would be in the minority, but that's okay. When I was growing up, if you had unexpected company that stayed long enough for it to be dinner time, a true Southern hostess would say, "Oh, we were just going to sit down and have whatever. Stay and eat with us. There's a gracious plenty." A gracious plenty means we have more than enough. Good Southern phrase. I remember going to potlucks at church when I was a kid, and I had 2 brothers, so when we were all still at home, that was 5 of us going. And my mother was not the mother who took a pie. My mother was the one, in the summer, for instance, who would take a big dish of fresh corn from the garden. There would also be a big dish of peas from the garden, and another dish of green beans, and a pan of cornbread, a couple of fried chickens. You see where this is going. And a dessert. Yeah. And her reasoning was, if she was taking 5 people, she should take a meal. And, you know, that could be a typical meal for us, not in that amount, but her thought was there's enough for our family and for another family to share. That was her idea of a potluck. Multiply that by, I don't know, we probably had an average of 75 to 100 women. Multiply that by all those people. Because most of the families in the church I grew up in had at least 2 kids. And we had 2 families that had 5 kids. So our potlucks did kind of look like the feeding of the 5,000. There was a gracious plenty. Now my mom was an awesome cook, so we seldom took home any leftover food. Some of the not as good cooks did take home leftovers. But there were always leftovers. There was always more than enough. If 10 families showed up without a thing, there would have been plenty. There was a gracious plenty. That was what I grew up with. Now we have a story where Jesus went to be by himself. You know, we all need those moments when there's nobody around. If your family comes to visit, you are thrilled that they are there. But be honest, aren't you just a little happy when they go home? Just a little. Even if you miss them terribly, aren't you finally glad you can sit in your recliner and not have to worry about what you're cooking for the next meal, or if you have enough stuff for the grandchildren to do? It's wonderful to have them, but sometimes it's just as wonderful when they leave. And that's okay. Jesus needed some time alone. He got in a boat and went to a deserted place. But his plan did not work. People heard, and they came. And the next thing he knows, here's all these people. Now he could have said, come on guys, I'm pooped. Go. But he didn't. He took compassion upon these people, and he healed their sick. And it took a while because it was a big crowd. And then the disciples came and said, we have to send these people home. It's time to eat. And I would imagine in a crowd of 5,000, there were probably a couple of diabetics. And you know, if you're diabetic, you got to eat at given times. There were surely sick people who needed nutrition or were just hungry. And they didn't have any food. It's not like there was McDonald's on the corner, or Kentucky Fried Chicken, or a Shell station, or a Quick Trip. It was a deserted place. There was nothing. And Jesus said, you don't have to send them away. You feed them. Okay, folks, think about, ladies, what's in your purse? Men, what's in your pockets? If I said, okay, let's eat, think about what you have with you. Could all of us eat? Now think of it as 12 people. If we did a survey, we would probably find a couple of grandmas that have a baggie of goldfish crackers or a bag of M&Ms, some little something, maybe a pack of Tic Tacs. Tums. Yeah, there's a good meal. of gum. Not a meal. And the disciples surely thought, okay, he's losing it. He really does need time off. And they said, well, we found someone who has 2 fish. Okay, fishermen, what's the average size fish you catch? Yeah. I'm not a fisher person. The only fish I ever caught would best be described as bait. So nobody's eating off of that. And 5 little loaves of bread. Now I'm guessing these were probably like dinner roll size. Of course, those of us who are very diet conscious would probably say, all those carbs? But there's 5,000 people. And Jesus says, bring me the food. What would you have thought had you been one of those disciples? I'd have been thinking, ooh, how's that going to work? And Jesus blessed the bread. He broke it in little pieces, like for communion. We have little pieces of bread. And he told them to pass it around. I would not have wanted to be one of the guys passing, okay? Because I would have figured, with what we started with, the first 3 or 4 people might get a taste, and the rest of them would be lucky if they got a sniff. And the fight would break out pretty soon after. But they had so much food that they collected 12 baskets of leftovers. That's more than they started with. 12 baskets. Even if they were just little bitty baskets, it's still more than they started with. What was the miracle here? Did Jesus actually bless this bread and these 2 little fish to an extent that it was truly enough for everyone? Or was it perhaps like the stone soup story, where everybody realized, well, you know, I got my little bag of goldfish crackers, got my pack of M&Ms. I mean, they were in a time where there were not convenience stores all over the place. There were not grocery stores that were open 24 hours a day. Of course, that's true here too, but that's another story. Don't you think one person besides that little kid had forethought to bring something to eat? Perhaps the miracle was people realized they could share and did. This was a time when things were scarce. Most of the people who were seeking out Jesus were poor. They were sick. He had just done healing. Well, sick people couldn't work. Even if they were physically able, they couldn't get a job. Nobody wanted to be around them. They were social pariahs. So they would have had nothing. But somehow there was more than enough. And isn't that the real meaning of this story? There is enough. There is enough land in the world for people to have a place to be. There is enough food in the world that people need not die of starvation. But they do. There are people in this country who die of starvation. There are people who go to bed hungry every night. And what are those of us who have more than we need called to do? It's a question each of us must answer for ourselves. Some of you grew up during the Depression. The Depression was a time of great poverty, but most people who lived then didn't have much. It wasn't that there were some people who had billions of dollars while others had nothing. There were some people with money, but most people didn't have much. So what did those people do? They planted gardens. They shared when they could. If they had more food than they could eat before it spoiled, they would share with others. They would can, they would freeze for a day when there might not be enough. I was very surprised to learn that there are places in this country that are referred to as food deserts. If you've never heard that term before, a food desert is a place where people have limited, if any, access to fresh fruit and vegetables. The only things that they have access to are prepackaged foods. Prepackaged foods are loaded with carbs and sodium and sugar and things that are not particularly healthy. And since these people tend to be poor, even if the fresh fruits and vegetables were there, they still wouldn't have much in the way of access because they would be so expensive that they would still be stuck eating boxed macaroni and cheese. If you've ever wondered why so many poor people are overweight and have diabetes, look at what they eat. Anybody who eats such a heavily carb-laden diet is going to be overweight, no matter how much or how little they eat. This story tells us there's enough. Maybe not enough for everybody to have everything they want, but enough for everybody to have what they need. In just a moment, we will share a meal together, a holy meal, that is not meant to fill our stomachs, but to fill our hearts, to make us a community who lives together, who loves each other, and who cares. May we always remember there's enough.